स्पीकर पे ना स्पीकर पे ना
Please give a big round of applause and welcome Mr. Ahmed. And our very own management members, Hegde sir, Radhika ma'am, and all the heads present, and my wonderful friends and colleagues. Welcome all. Mr. Ahmed has many feathers in his cap. A first generation entrepreneur, Sultan founded LXL Ideas, formerly EduMedia, an organization that impacts learning for students, parents, and educators by making lessons for life through its verticals. Mentor, India's leading education publication, School Cinema, a film based module that makes learning lessons of life an entertaining experience, and Krayon, India's most respected events brand that conceptualizes and organizes large impact kids events. A passionate educator, Sultan is a recipient of 6 prestigious President of India's National Film Awards as producer. Sultan holds a master degree in entrepreneurship from MIT Boston. An alumnus of St. Germain High School, Bangalore, Sultan completed his BE Chemical Engineering from Dayanand Sagar College of Engineering, Bangalore University. He is a certified NLP practitioner and master trainer from Dale Carnegie, an amazing speaker, respected motivational trainer, admired event manager, and a prolific educational blogger. Sultan's many interests include riding his Harley Davidson on long trips. Sultan is an advisor to CIET, NCERT, and member of FCCI School Education Committee. He serves as an advisor to several children's brands, educational institutions. He has published several research papers in international journals on psychosocial development of children and media pedagogy. Sultan also serves on boards of several enterprises like EduSports, ThoughtNet Technologies, Dex Global, Campus Diaries, Blue Ribbon Movement, etc. I request Hegde sir to come on stage and welcome and felicitate Dr. Mr. Syed Sultan Ahmed. Thank you, sir. As we all know, from last 2 years, we organize a talk by an educationist in memory of Dr. B.D. Tsaure, former Pro Vice Chancellor of Savitribai Phule, Pune University, working as academic advisor to Kannada Sangha's Kaveri Group of Institutes. He was an academician par excellence and contributed immensely to our organization. He passed away on 10th Feb 2015. So, in loving memory of Dr. Tsaure, sir, we are proud to have you as our speaker for today and eagerly looking forward to your words. Today's topic is Teaching for Life. You all can watch Sultan sir's TEDx Bangalore talk on soft skilling India's school children through films. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hegde, all the wonderful educators in the front row, and all teaching staff of the Kaveri Group of Institutions. It's such a pleasure to be here and deliver this wonderful lecture for you. I'm very touched that the school decided to honor one of its own who's no longer with you with such a noble gesture. And I'd like to congratulate you for putting together this, and thank you for giving me the invitation. I have a very difficult task today, and when when you have to teach teachers, it's not easy, is it? So how many of you have been teaching now for over 10 years? Put up your hands, please. Right. Wow. So, and how many of you have been teaching for less than 5 years? Less than 5 years. All right. So predominantly, I have a very experienced audience over here. But before I start off, can I make a request? I see a lot of chairs in front vacant. Can I quickly, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Can I request a lot of you sitting right there at the back to start coming in front? I hate seeing chairs in front vacant. Can I request you to please get up quickly? Stand up, all of you. All the teachers, please stand up quickly. Remember, I'm a teacher today, right? And can I request the lights to be on in the audience as well as on stage? Only when I show the film will get that dark. Because I love seeing the lovely faces of teachers. Come in front. There's a lot more place in front. Quickly. Especially the ones at the back. I don't like backbenchers. Okay, you've got 10 more seconds. It's dominated crowd, right? And I think it's wonderful because ladies not just nurture the world and the young that the world, gets every time a newborn is born. It's always the fact that even education is in your hands, in your care. So over the next hour or so, I'm going to be focusing on some of the things that I've learned, and I'm going to be talking to you on a topic, teaching for life. Whenever I, as a person who's been working in the space of education now for over a decade, look at education, look at it from the outside, it looks like our entire world revolves around trying to get our children a job. Everybody wants a good school. In every school, you want good marks. Once you've gotten good marks, you want a good college. And once you've got a good college, you want a good? Yeah. And that's exactly what's happening. And the more we talk about education, the more it's focused on livelihood. There's something very bizarre that's happening. And I'm a researcher by profession, and I'll only be talking from factual information. And that is, most of our children, after 18, 20 years of education, they're not employable. They don't have any of those basic skills which the workplace requires outside. And what's a bigger tragedy, according to me, is in this entire process of trying to get a livelihood for them, we forget that there is a life that they have to live. And we don't teach them to live that life. And that's the reason why I chose the topic teaching for life, because livelihood is a small part of living. Livelihood is not life. There's an entire life that our children need to live. So let's look at some statistics today, right? You and I happen to be in the world's youngest country. Are you aware of it? We have over 400 million children below the age of 14 and 15. 400 million. That's almost 500 million children less than 15 years old. And if you look at the ones below 21, it's 750 million. And all of these numbers, I'm talking, are only in India. There's another very interesting statistic. The average age of an Indian is approximately 28 or 29 today. If you take an average Indian's age, it's 28, 29. Whereas the average American's age is 38, 39. And average Japanese age is around 50 plus. What it means is, we don't just have the world's youngest population, we also have the world's largest young people in this country. If there's one thing that India is going to export more than anything else in the coming decades, it's going to be our young people going out. Because who will run countries which are so old? They need young people to run. This is a statistic that you will need to keep in mind. A lot of you put up your hands and said that you've been teaching for over 10 years, right? Let me ask you a couple of questions. How many of your students, how many of you think that 100% of the students that you teach in Pune live in the city of Pune? Put up your hands. Do they live in the city of Pune, or where do they go? They travel all over the country? They travel all over the world? Yes or no? Think about this answer that you just gave me. Most of your students that you teach are not going to be living in your own city, in your own state, and a lot of them not even in your own country. And the question for us is, are we preparing them for a life outside of the school, outside of the city, outside of the state, outside of the country? Think about it. So in today's lecture, I'm going to be talking to you about three things. One is just the kind of world that our children are living in, just the world that we live in. And I'm going to give you my perspective of it. It's a very interesting world out there. I think it's very interesting. And for me as a traveler, I consider myself a traveler first than anything else. I spend a lot of time traveling. And when I travel, I see the world. I've taught in several countries. And as a traveler, as a teacher in different parts of the world, I realize and I see world very differently, from a very different perspective. So I'm going to be sharing with you the perspective of the world that I see. The second thing that I'm going to be talking to you about is what kind of skills do our children need if they are to survive in a world and go out to any nook and corner of the world and live a good, happy life. And thirdly, I'm going to be talking to you about 7 skills that teachers need today. So these are the 3 things that I'm going to be focusing on. So let me begin with what kind of a world that we're growing up in. And all of us are aware of this. We live in something called as a digital or an information era, right or wrong? Yes or no? Yes. Yeah, we live in an information era. You know what that means for education? It's asking a very big question, remember. Our entire education system today revolves around teaching information to children. And information is available literally in our hands. There was a time when you were a doctor, and if I were a patient, who had more information about medicine, the body, diseases? The doctor did. Today, if you're a doctor and I'm sitting across you, can we have a competition? Who's got more information? Hands down, I have all the information. Education in the past meant if you were educated, you had more information than I did. And today, information is available to everybody. And if you think that teaching information is the role of an educational institution or a teacher, you've got it totally wrong. Information is available for everyone. But what you need to teach today is how do you identify from that information what is relevant information. Let's go on Google and type, which is the best school of Pune, right? Just type, top school of Pune. You're going to get all kinds of answers. What is the right answer? You're going to go on to Google and just type, which is a good restaurant to have lunch today. You're going to get hundreds of thousands of millions of answers these days. Now remember, there was a time when we were teaching information to children. Now, don't teach them more information. Teach them how to sort out and analyze information. That's the skill you need to teach. In fact, if you want to make note of one of the world's biggest and the most required professions of the future, it's going to be an analytics and analyzing information. So let's be teaching our children. So this is the world that they live in, which is all about the information era. Here's the next one. It sounds very simple, but it has a huge relevance. All of you agree that we live in a video era? Yes or no? And as a teacher, I want you to understand this, and this is how I look at it. Is reading very good? How many of you think reading is very good? Put up your hands, please. I think reading is fantastic. I think it's a wonderful thing that we all read. But I'm here to share with you a perspective. If your children are not reading, it's not such a big deal. You know why? Over 1,000 years ago, when publishing was invented, it revolutionized the way information was spread. I'm sure not a lot of you are aware that there's a branch of Christianity called as the Protestants. You know how the Protestants came into being? For almost 2,000 years, the church was the only one which had a copy of the Bible. And the clergy used to tell the people what the Bible was saying because nobody could read and the information was not available. And suddenly you had the printing press, and what do you think was the first and the most popular book that was published by the printing presses? Yeah. So a lot of people started getting a copy of the Bible. And people read the Bible and said, wait a minute, what's written in the Bible is not what you're telling me. So I protest. And started the movement of Protestants, literally. And then on, around the 1100s when the publishing industry started, till very recently, till the 1990s, till 2000, the most popular, economic, practical way of passing on knowledge, information, history, experiences, learning, stories was through books. And the most practical way of consuming information was through reading. And that's what we knew of. But the past 5 or 6 years or 10 years, something's happened. 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, do you remember how difficult it was to make a video? You had this big camera with one big light, the light hitting your faces in a wedding, remember? It was a difficult thing. Pan back to 50 years ago. It was so difficult in the era of a silver screen and a film roll to make a film. It was very difficult. It was very expensive. It was not just expensive to make videos, it was very expensive to watch videos as well, or films. Everything's changed. One of the most simplest things to create today, even a 1 or 2-year-old today can just pick up a phone and shoot a video, yes or no. And it's so easy to consume. So we are living in an era which I call as a video era, and a few decades later people will look back and say it was around the 2010 to 20 when the world got revolutionized by videos, and you can see it happening all around. It's easy to create content, it's easy to consume content, and remember, our education is stuck in the books. That's the world that you and I are living in. Here's another very interesting thing, and that's the third point that I wanted you to bring about. And it's actually asking a very basic question to the world of education. And that question is, from the time of Adam and Eve, if we believe in creation of God, or from the time of the ancient Puranas and the Mahabharata, still very recently, education always meant that I had knowledge, information, experiences, learning, which I passed on to the learner, correct? So if I have to use today's language and talk about that, whether I did it in a Gurukul system or a madrasa system, whether I did it in a CBSE school, ICSE school, right, whether I did it in a college, no matter what I did, I had the content with me as a teacher, as a syllabus, as an educational body, as a school, and my learners were consuming content, right? This is today's language. I have content, my learners were consuming content. Today, for the first time, we have a generation of young kids who are not happy consuming content. They want to create content. I put up a Facebook post, you're not just happy reading it, you want to comment on it. You want to share it, right? I put up a Twitter and you want to give your opinion on it. So we are living in an era today where people are not just happy consuming content. Look at the newspaper, look at the television. It's one-way traffic. They're giving you the content and you are consuming the content. But suddenly we have a whole era where people, and especially the young ones, they're not happy consuming content, they want to create content. By the way, if you thought it's only the young people who are creating content, a lot of my mother's generation, for example, my mother just cannot read one WhatsApp message and keep quiet. She has to put a comment and forward it to me, right? And she's like, oh, gets very excited. That means she is adding to the content. She's creating a newer version of the content and passing it on. So to remember, today as educational institutions and as teachers, you are dealing with a young bunch of learners, and your education is about giving them information. And they don't want to just consume content, they want to create content. Here's another very interesting thing that you and I see around. It is estimated that all the children studying in your schools today, more than 60-70% of them will be in professions 10-15 years down the line that you and I have not heard of. You've not even heard of those professions. All right? And when I look around me today, I run an education, media, and an events company, right? And I realize that a lot of things that we are doing today were not even heard of a few years ago. For example, just last month, we were trying to look for an Android developer for an internal IT company that I run. Now, do you realize that there is no college in this country which actually teaches young kids to become Android developers? So where do children go and learn? They go online, do a 3-month program and come back. So why did somebody go to an engineering college for 18 or 20 years the kind of professions that are out there. I come from Bangalore, right? And Bangalore typifies the way the world has changed. 10 years ago and 15 years ago, I had not heard of the word called as BPO, or business process outsourcing. Years ago, we used to call it call centers, and I have done myself a lot of communication training programs for call centers. Today, as I'm talking to you, there are over 1.5 million people only in the city of Bangalore, directly and indirectly employed with the BPOs. And every single one of them, when they were studying in school, they had not heard of the word BPO. 15 years ago, it's now 14 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, when I decided to start my own company, my mother was very upset. You're an engineer, you should get a job for yourself. Why do you want to start something on your own? Right? I was sent to a counselor actually. I'm serious. She sent me to a counselor, and the counselor tried talking to me. Thankfully, he was a good counselor because he didn't talk much, he only heard me out. And I'm so glad, because counselor's job is not to talk, it's just to listen. Right? And today, when I look around me, entrepreneurship is the big buzzword. And every young parent today wants their children to go and do something on their own. Just look at the change that you and I are seeing. So what I'm just trying to highlight here is the fact that your children are going to go out into a world and you have no clue what it is going to be. I can just imagine a whole world with cars that drive on their own, right? With everything that can be printed. You know, you got this auditorium, and Hegde sir, you need to do a maintenance of it. One chair is broken, you have a 3D printer which will just print the seat and you can put it back there, right? And you came, you know, I'm from Bangalore, I came here and I realized I've forgotten my glasses, and then you just asked me, can you just mail me the specs of your specs, and you'll just print it and give it to me. I mean, 3D printing, driverless cars, artificial intelligence. I cannot even begin to imagine the kind of world that you're going to live in the next 5 or 10 years. And the reason why it's urgent and important is because when the first telephone came into existence, over 150 years ago, it took over 100 years for the telephone to travel across the world and for societies and people to get the telephone, right? When the internet came about 25 years ago or 30 years ago, it took around 25 years for the internet to travel the whole world. 15, 20 years ago, when the mobiles came into existence, 30 years ago, but it became commercially viable 20 years ago, it took around 20 years for mobiles to reach everyone across the world. Interestingly, smartphones were invented 7 years ago, and almost every nook and corner of the world, you've got smartphones. I don't know how many of you can actually now comprehend and imagine. Did you know that there was no iPad that existed in 2008 and 9? Yeah, it was launched in 2008 end. And it looks like we were born and brought up with iPads and touchscreen phones. Technology is changing really fast. The world outside is changing fast. The professions are going to change really fast. So what are we teaching our children for? Yesterday's professions? Think about it. This is the world that we're living in. Here's another very interesting one, which is for me very relevant, especially when it comes to teachers. There was a time when I was a little kid and growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, I remember going to school and carrying these flowers for teachers. I studied in an all-boys school, and we had some of these very pretty-looking teachers. And we boys, as 10-year-old, 12-year-old, we actually fought as to who's going to go and keep the flower first on the table, right? Cut to 15, 20 years down the line, there are no flowers coming on tables these days. Do they come? Very rarely, even if they do, right? The heroes in the lives of our children have changed. There used to be a Shah Rukh Khan or an Amitabh Bachchan, one hero in the silver screen, but they had real life heroes. They had their teachers, they had their seniors in school, they were the heroes. But remember today, children, do you know what percentage of children watch television today? Below the age of 10, how much percentage of children do you think watch television? Less than 20%. You know what they consume, where they consume content, most of them? Internet. Most of them are consuming content. Do you know the world's largest consumers of YouTube? What's the age group? One of the world's largest consumers of YouTube. What's the age group? Below 4. Which world are you living in? India's most successful YouTube channels are called Chuchu TV, Chotuns. Go and see just the number of views that the kids are giving them. Most successful and most consumed and most money-making channels are all for kids below 4 and 5. Do you know that people today are making content for children below 1 year old? So my TG, so I'm making content. I'm a filmmaker. By the way, I'm talking to you very specific information. And what's my TG? Oh, up to 12 months. Yeah. We change. Our heroes are different today. My nephew lives in Dubai, and recently he sent me a link saying, Mama, I've started my YouTube channel. And he is 9 years old. All right? And I asked him, who's your heroes? And he sent me some vague vloggers. Have you heard of this word called vlogger? Video blogging. So they're called YouTubers. They run channels, right? Yeah, I live in a very different world today. And kids are being inspired by very different people. People who are living in almost any corner of the world can be inspiring your children. It's not just the one in your neighborhood. It's not the ones in your city or your country. People from across the world, right? The heroes have changed. What that means to the teacher, you are not as cool as that blogger and vlogger and YouTuber. You're not as cool as Shin-chan or Pokemon. It is a challenge because the exposure makes them aware of things across the world, and their heroes have changed. I'm not here to debate whether it's right, wrong, good, bad. I'm just telling you that this is what's happening out there. Here's another interesting one. There's something which is a lie that my teachers told me. My parents told me that. My society told me it. When I was in school, they told me that, your turning point of your life is grade 10. 10th standard came, 10th standard went, I didn't turn anywhere. Because there's only one direction that I could do, and that direction was in 11th standard I had to take up science. Why? If you're a good student, you take up. Then when I went to 11th standard, they told me another lie. 12th standard is the most important exam of your life. So in 12th, I wanted to become like a doctor. Right? So I just thought it sounds very cool, Dr. Sultan. I don't know why. I can't think of any other reason why I wanted to become a doctor. Or maybe my mom just thought that doctors were very cool because they made more money than most other people. 12th standard came and I did my CET, which is very popular in Karnataka, and thankfully, I did not get a medical seat. I'm saying thankfully now, but it was like almost a semi-mourning happening at my house. Right, my aunts, my mom, they had this, literally like somebody's demise. So Dr. Sultan was dead already before he was born. So, so I didn't get into medicine, so what do you think I did? Yeah, engineering. That's what we all do in India, right? And this is exactly how I chose my engineering stream. So there's this CET in which you go and sit down, and there's this guy who is giving you counseling. The way he looks at you looks like nobody's counseled him ever, right? So he's trying to counsel you. And behind him, I have this whole list of branches, and there were numbers next to it as to how many seats are available. This was the good old days.